Scott and Shane are going to be going into. And before we do that, though, I was just going to share, just for those of you who may not have too much exposure, familiarity with our team, or just to understand a little bit more about us, just share just a couple minutes on our team at Choice Solutions, and we'll turn it over to the guys. So just for those, again, those who aren't familiar with us, a lot of our people, our team, our staff, located throughout the central part of the U.S. and also in the Southeast. And kind of over the past 5-6 years, we've had the opportunity to work with companies like yourselves throughout the U.S. just through referral, reputation, other means. So had the opportunity to work with companies from coast to coast, and that's always very exciting. So what we're in business to do, or the problems we're here to help solve, is you have a workforce, and they want to be, especially in today's hybrid workforce, the last couple of years, things we've been dealing with. You've got folks that need to be able to work a consistent work experience, whether for working from home, whether they're in the office, on the go, whatnot. They want a productive, empowered kind of experience. Obviously, it's got to be secure, and it's got to be high performance. So on the flip side, though, you have as IT and business leaders, you need to make sure you have the proper security and control implemented to protect your important business data, but also too, you're recognizing technology as an important means towards the end user employee experience, and as such, also seeing it as an opportunity to help with retaining as well as attracting top talent in today's competitive marketplace. And as senior, go back one. As senior admins, architects, managers, directors, those of you who are joining us here today, on the back end, you're working on all these various initiatives, in that cloud journey, that transformation from maybe legacy applications, legacy infrastructure approaches, and working towards adopting the right mix of private cloud, workloads that belong on-prem, which SaaS applications bring value to the business, as well as how to incorporate public cloud providers. So those are all things that we know that you're working on towards the back end. And what we're here to do, our aim, our objective is we're here just to help you be a partner and help you adopt simpler, more secure IT environments, whether that's from the data center or the cloud service, all the way down to the endpoint and your end user. So simple cloud architectures, secure digital workspaces, and incorporating automated IT services. So we've got a number of leading innovative IT solutions and partners that we work with, so we can help you out traditional technology acquisition, resell, whether it be acquiring the technology on the front end, whether it be helping with renewals, whether it be just understanding and learning and which solutions are right to adopt. But more significantly on our team, we've got an awesome professional services organization. So, and Scott and Shane are a couple of leaders of part of that team. They'll be diving into some stuff today, but we can help you with advisory services, kind of understanding and kind of putting together that roadmap to incorporate new technologies, architecting, designing new solutions, performing health checks, jumpstart engagements to unlock new technology, as well as have a project management office to assist in kind of getting there, getting your projects delivered on time. For those organizations that might need help on ongoing or operational assistance, we've got a managed services team and organization as well. So we can come in and meet you maybe at the gaps you might have, whether it be a gap, or maybe it's a fully managed type of solution, or even for some environments, something that we might fully host and manage for you. So a great team there that we can potentially be a partner to you and your organization. Specific to today, I was going to dive in just to a couple of technologies that Shane and Oz are going to be really diving into a little bit further, and just share just briefly a competency and accreditations there. So Nutanix, the team will be diving into some awesome technology we're excited about there. We're one of their top recognized partners in the US, achieved the highest level of designation you can. We've got you can see here, that's not something we resell. It's something we're very passionate about. It's something that most of our engineers and technical resources have as like a primary skill set. And so being able to go in and understand it, what all kind of goes into it, but again, with the aim of helping your organization be successful in learning about it, as well as adopting the technology, and then also growing with it and getting the full investment out of it. So a number of customers have the opportunity to assist, and we've also even had the opportunity, Scott, to be able to lead up a local Nutanix users group. So Microsoft will be kind of tapping in a little bit on the public cloud side, but specific to Microsoft, We are a gold platform provider on the Azure side, heavy focus and growth, and especially as organizations like yourself, you might be learning and understanding end user computing in Microsoft, whether it be Azure Virtual Desktops or bringing other existing platforms like Citrix into Azure. Strong competencies and capabilities there that we can be of assistance to you there. We're a Microsoft CSP, so we can assist with Azure or any kind of O365, M365 range of assistance and services there. And then also on the Citrix side, again, top accreditation with Citrix Platinum Plus. We're also a CSP, so a service provider with Citrix. So depending on your needs, your challenges, what you're trying to do, we've got a range of different ways we can approach things with Citrix. And then Scott, or Oz, and Shane, who'll be diving into today, both of those have earned the Citrix Technology Professional Accreditation. That's a very elite program to be kind of nominated and incorporated a part of. So we've got an awesome team with fantastic experience and knowledge and a deep bench to kind of be able to help you, again, be successful with the initiatives and the life cycle of maybe pursuing and investing in a technology platform like this. And a handful of our team are also very involved in local and regional Citrix user group community as well. So along with that, it's just a little fresh info I was going to share. Yesterday, very excited, and a huge congrats to our team, to Oz, Shane K, efforts by everyone across our team, but also to many of you who are a part of this, our customers, and the opportunities that we've had to learn and understand and be a part of your projects and your initiatives and help you with your journey. Yesterday, Citrix named us their Cloud Partner of the Year in the Americas. So we're super excited about that. Thought we'd just highlight that real quick. And again, to the customers we've had the opportunity to be a part of on that journey, thank you for helping make that a possibility for us. We are super excited to earn that recognition. So with that, that's a little bit about us. That's all I really want to share, and kind of wanted to get you introduced to Shane K and Oz. Again, the two lead architects and head up our EUC practice. They put a lot of investment and time into this deep dive session. They love to showcase and talk through new stuff, especially as things we feel like are going to be super relevant to you as an organization, maybe over the next 6-12 months or so you guys can start understanding it, asking questions, and then when and where there's an opportunity for us to maybe engage and see how we can help you out. So with that, I'd love to turn it over to Oz and Shane K, and enjoy the session. Thanks so much, everyone, for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Dana. So I guess I'll go first since I'm first on the slide. But yeah, Senior Solutions Architect, for those of you that don't know, Choice Solutions, I've been here 10 years, so I'm tenured now, right? Whatever. North Central region, a little bit about myself. I hail from Omaha here, so I don't know where all you guys are from, but it's really cold right now. So honestly, I'm sitting down here and shivering a little bit. I got the fireplace on. It's 0 degrees. Hasn't warmed up down here, so it's pretty brutal here up here in the patch I'm in right now. So I lead our North Central region for us. I'm also the co-EUC practice lead across all these technologies with Shane. So needless to say, Shane and myself work together nearly every day on various things. So we're constantly joined at the hip, right? I think it's a joke, but it is true. CTP, like Dana mentioned, I'm also proud to be on the NTC side of things with their community award, and then the NVIDIA piece too. So GPU is a passion for me too. We've had webinars in the past for high definition graphics in Azure and elsewhere and those kind of things. So I'm part of that NGCA program with NVIDIA. So that's a little bit about me. So Shane.
Awesome. How you doing, hip buddy?
I know, man. I know.
That's right. You're so far away, man. It's nice when we do these in person. But no, it's great to be here.
You're warmer than me, though, bro. You're warmer.
Yeah. Well, no, actually, it's pretty cold here in the office. It's like 65 in the office, and 80 degrees in sunny South Florida. So weather's a little bit different, man. So I feel for you, man. So yeah, so I'm Shane Kleinert. So as Oz mentioned, we kind of co-lead the UC practice together, senior solutions architect here, and I lead up the Southeast region from an engineering perspective. So yeah, so in Citrix CTP, I think I'm like 7 years now. So it's, believe it or not, time flies, man. So it's an honor to be a part of that program. Also, just recently minted there the Azure Solutions Architect. So pretty excited about that. We've really been expanding our horizons from an Azure perspective over the last few years. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that today. And as we talk about kind of public cloud and multi-cloud scenarios. But I'm probably more proud of kind of my other certifications here. Recently minted a Netflix certified professional, Amazon Prime Elite, Hulu dazzling expert, and a Apple certified champion. So yeah, so do a little bit about me is I stay up late and watch tons of shows with my wife. So when I'm not doing tech, I'm watching shows.
That's a big one for our team. So yeah.
Cool, man. So we also, let's click next here. So we also have a special guest with us today, a good friend, and also Jarian Gibson in the building. Good friend, senior architect there. Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself, Jarian. We're awesome to have you here with us.
Yeah, always happy to help and be on. So my name is Jarian Gibson. I'm a staff solutions architect with Nutanix and EUC engineering, and I focus everything with Citrix on Nutanix. So always happy to help out and answer questions. And I just want to say congrats to the Choice team on your Cloud Partner of the Year award that you guys received as well. So congratulations.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you, man. We're super excited about it.
And also, Scott, I can relate to your cold weather because I'm just 3 hours south of you in Kansas City, so it's cold here as well.
0 degrees. I don't even know.
Cold. I can't warm up right now. Yeah, it's brutal.
Would have packed up and left a long time ago, man. That's why we came down here.
Yeah.
Cool, man. So we want to start it off, like kind of keeping things interactive. So we got this little QR code here. If you don't mind, just go ahead and scan that from your phone. Hopefully it looks a little blurry, but we tested it should work. We wanted to go ahead and kind of kick off with a couple questions, open it up, kind of get a feel, for the audience here, kind of get a feel for what everyone's kind of running in the environment and whatnot. So first question we have here is, are you currently a Nutanix customer?
Hey, I didn't even get a chance to scan the QR code.
Let me jump back, man. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I wait for you, man. I guess I should vote too.
You're quick on the gun there, bro.
Yeah, I got a quick trigger finger. All right. So I'll answer this one. Probably biased, but I'll answer it. All right. So I think everyone scanned it. So we're going to go ahead to the first question. Are you currently a Nutanix customer? So a good amount of people on the call are. If you're not, we'll do kind of a high level as Oz goes into clusters. We'll kind of cover at a high level, what Nutanix is and what the value it brings to specifically end user computing. Like today, we're really covering end user computing, and we'll talk about the value add it brings to your Citrix environment. So. All right, so second question, let me go ahead and pull that up here. Which public cloud are you currently using or planning to use? And with clusters support, right? So that's why obviously there's other public clouds, but we have AWS and Azure. So it's kind of just get a feel for the room here. So a lot of Azure folks, that's kind of what we see in the field. We see a lot of folks, just look at that Azure creeping up. Oh, I didn't vote.
No surprise here. Anytime I talk about clusters, Azure is always asked about. So no surprise seeing the total for Azure there being high.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the drive, right, is 365, right? It kind of gets you that footprint, gets your tenant created, and it just naturally kind of gets you going. That's what we're seeing too. So that's interesting to see. All right, so let's go to our next one. Are you running clusters today? That's Nutanix clusters. So particularly when we say Nutanix clusters, we're talking about what we're going to be really focusing on today is where you can actually run Nutanix in public cloud on bare metal.
Yeah, so it might be confusing to some people on the answers here, but yeah, what we'll be talking about specifically today, you got obviously a cluster, a Nutanix cluster, but Nutanix clusters as a product is their bare metal clusters in public cloud. So
sweet, awesome. So yeah, we'll look forward to diving into this. And all right, looks like I think we got all the votes in. Oh, we're still coming. Maybe I should give it a minute.
Just give it a moment here. All right. Maybe after the webinar, baby.
Yeah. All right, let's give it out to the next one here. So we have about 40 questions. We figured to make it live interactive, get everyone on the audience and just go through 40 questions. So are you running a hybrid environment today? Right, hybrid meaning, you know, on premises, and then also, you know, extending your environment into a public cloud, kind of talking about it in that context.
Yeah, now this one I would expect to be more even because it seems
Yeah,
like a lot
and we're
of our
actually seeing that, right? It's
conversations,
kind of what we were talking about. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the conversations we're having with you know, various, you know, medium to big enterprise, it's hybrids going to be the way of the world for quite some time. So
Let's look at that, even split 7 and 7.
yeah, and
Nice.
big planning for this year and 5. So this really isn't too much of a surprise to me at all. So it's really good.
No, that's definitely what we've been seeing, kind of talking in the field over the last 2 years. We've probably been doing more, really for us. I mean, over the last 2 years, it's been really focused on hybrid. A lot of customers are moving that direction, whether it's, you know, from a business continuity perspective, just expansion, bursting, and we'll talk through those scenarios. So let's hit our next one. What version of Citrix virtual apps and desktops are you running? CVAD service, buy upgrades, right? Because you don't have to worry about upgrading anymore from a control plane perspective. Obviously, you still need to worry about those VDAs. Interesting. So, okay, so yeah, we'll spend a little bit of time talking through the CVAD service. Seems a lot of folks are still on the on-premise LTSR release. And we'll actually be showing that today. So, others. Curious what those others are. You put them in the chat on any presentation server out there. You always find those little got that one app that's running that no one knows how to upgrade anymore. That's just been kind of running out there on presentation server, 4 or 5.
Yeah,
Runs like 50% of the revenue for the business. Yeah, definitely got like of those 3. There's probably like 1 in that scenario. All right, sweet. Yeah, I think because we've been averaging about 20. So
this is very interesting to me, just to spend a second here. So obviously we're, you know, the focus on our on what we're talking about today, we're using CVAD service in conjunction with Nutanix clusters and public cloud and all that. So you know, it is, I thought it would be a little bit higher on the CVAD service side of things for voting personally, myself. But now
I didn't vote yet. I got you, man. Hold on.
You don't count.
I got you.
But, to me, that just means there's ample opportunity gets you know, to get you guys on the, you know, the service side of things, and we'll talk about that, like you
yeah, the value, right?
The value, right? Yep.
Awesome. So yeah, so that's it for the questions. I was not 40. I was just messing around. So let's go ahead and stop the poll.
Come on.
Yeah. Oh, we had one last vote. We had another person on the CVAD service. I think that was
715 wins. 715
Yep.
wins.
Wow. We'll have to let
just
Citrix know
that
about
note,
that.
that's going, I think, end of life here in just a little bit. So in the
Yeah.
next LTSR is
add you into the ready to upgrade category.
coming very soon. So yeah.
Sweet, man. So Oz, yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and give kind of an update what we kind of put together here.
Yeah, so we want to talk a little bit about, you know, our lab and the tools. We usually do a rundown every time we do one of these because it changes to a big degree every time we do one. We also, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, we also are ones that flirt with the live lab gods every time. And we've gotten away with that many times, but this one might be burning us here a little bit at the end, right? So we're having some things that we'll talk through, but yeah, so we try to do live labs and demos and those kind of things, so our tools change. We are using CVAD service again, VDA 2112 on a, you know, single session Windows 10 image for this one, in conjunction with you know, features from Citrix, Rendezvous, EDT for those of you that are familiar on the Citrix service side. This is, you know, intelligent protocol stuff and direct connection out to the cloud service. You know, we've been playing around with the auto provisioning, which is a tech preview feature from Citrix, and Shane will talk more about that and our experience there, because that's been interesting. But then they're fully built in, you know, auto scale as well, you know, tried and proven auto scale capabilities. We've been using that here, and that's a big part of this discussion. And then on the Nutanix side with AWS, right, we got Nutanix clusters, obviously, again, clusters being the clusters, the product in public cloud. For us, there's 4 different node types that you can use up there. It's a Z1D metal node in AWS. That's our cluster, but it is a single node for us, right? Because it's cheaper for us to run as a lab and for demo purposes, obviously, but for production, you would have a traditional 3-node cluster out there. But so that's our cluster. It's US East 1 region, North Virginia and AWS. We do have a 3-node cluster, a traditional cluster like that in Overland Park, Kansas, sitting on AHV. Again, everything for this is in our, what we're doing here is on AHV, but that doesn't mean you couldn't be Nutanix with ESXi sitting on-prem. And just to kind of talk that a little bit, for those of you who aren't familiar, Nutanix has their own hypervisor, right? The enterprise grade hypervisor AHV that you can utilize, right? So obviously we do for our lab purposes, we have AHV there. Everything in Nutanix clusters and public cloud is AHV on that side, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't be running ESX on your Nutanix cluster on-prem, and obviously AHV for the Nutanix cluster side.
And just to expand that real quick, Oz, also too, when you do a cross hypervisor migration, or DR is what we call it, and if you have ESXi on-prem, when you use our protection and replication tools, we actually inject the drivers on transit on the fly. That way you don't have to do any kind of migration or any kind of rework of your protected virtual machine. So it does help you, and then going back as well. So you can go back and forth between ESX and AHV. Our same limitations for cross hypervisor that we have on-prem also applies to clusters in the cloud as well.
Oh, thanks, Jaron. So yeah, so then we have a site between that AWS region where we are and our on-prem environment down here in Overland Park. Again, 110.21h2. We're using Automate for, it's one of our strategic, really important and strategic partners we work with for loading sessions up and just testing some things out, and how we can, fully load up the OP side and then burst out to AWS. So we want to really thank those guys for working with us. They've done a lot of work too with us on this webinar again, for helping us provide that kind of that synthetic load that we need to load things up, so we don't have to sit here and manually do things to load it up, right? And Shane's going to talk a little bit later about how it really Automate on that side with their product has really helped us find the issue that we've ran into for those gremlins that I just mentioned, that are the live demo gremlins. So yeah, so Automate on that side, and then Control Up, we're using 8.6 beta. So for those of you that are using Control Up for your monitoring operations side of the house, we got the 8.6 beta that we have for this.
And that has the Azure integration is the big deal there. It's been AWS for a long time, but the Azure integration is pretty cool to bring that contextual data from Azure in as well.
That's a great point. That's specifically why we're going to be doing more, just to see the new insights that it has with Azure and the Azure integration there. So we're using the beta on this side. So that's a little bit about our environment and what we got going on there. So.
Awesome. So yeah, so before we get kind of rolling into the kind of technical, getting into the technical deep dive, what's the value add provided by Nutanix clusters with Citrix and EUC? We do want to hit on one note that we put out there. We're excited to talk through. We've been personally, as Choice Solutions, we've been a Citrix partner for over 25 years, and Nutanix partner since pretty much the inception of the company. So we've always said, we wish these two companies would come together, and over the years they've come together through various partnerships. But this was really, last year was announced. It was really a really strong partnership between Citrix and Nutanix from the Citrix perspective. Because really, if you think about what Nutanix has been and what the vision has been over the years, it's really about choice. You can choose the hypervisor, you can choose the location where those clusters run, right? It's a similar scenario from a Citrix perspective. There's not that vendor lock-in, right? So Citrix's kind of commitment has said, even though Citrix has Zen Server as a hypervisor, obviously, or Citrix hypervisor, they call it, right? Is really Nutanix going forward is the preferred partner for hyperconverged infrastructure, hybrid multi-cloud solutions for the virtual apps and desktop servers. That's a pretty big stance from the Citrix side. We were super excited about that. because we've been a Citrix and Nutanix partner for a long time. On the Nutanix side, same scenario there, but really Citrix is the preferred partner from an end user computing perspective when running workloads on the Nutanix cloud platform. So, and what does that really mean, right? It sounds good, it's love fest, but what does it mean? It brings a lot of value, right? And Jarni could talk for a second about some of the additional developments there, but really about its product team. So aligning the product teams on the product development side of things, the roadmap, when you talk about, integration from a provisioning perspective, from a DR perspective. So, making sure there's validation, interoperability between those new features, looking at, customer support and really, seamless and faster experience on, the support side of things, as well as kind of onboarding new customers. And then really the vision, as we had mentioned, just continued alignment on the vision. And we'll talk through some of that with clusters here as well, and just really enjoying and creating the most flexible customer experience. So yeah, kudos to that. Anything you want to add there, Jarni, on the partnership?
Yeah, the main thing is just PM to PM and engineering to engineering alignment. So, we're meeting more frequently now, having a joint engineering roadmap and working through to improve and deepen any more integrations that we can do between AHV and Citrix. So stay tuned. We have a lot of good things that we've been discussing, and I can't wait for this stuff to start coming to fruition.
Yeah, same here. Super excited. So yeah, I guess let's go ahead and take it away, Oz. Give you control.
Yeah, press control there real quick. So yeah, so this webinar, it's a little bit longer. So we're gonna touch on some, we got some slides here. We're gonna obviously show some things from a live demo perspective and for what we can there. But first, I'm gonna go over a little bit about the Nutanix cluster side with Jarni here to really get into this, and then Shane will kind of take it more on the Citrix integration with Nutanix and clusters for that piece after that. But just for those of you that don't know, on the Nutanix clusters and what is Nutanix clusters, right? So Nutanix clusters as a product, it enables you to basically run it on AWS EC2 bare metal instances, right? So today that is AWS. I got a timeline coming up where we're going to mention and talk about the Azure side of things. Which is honestly what we were hoping to do initially was Azure, because a boatload of our projects are Azure related. So we were really hoping to get in on that early access release for the Azure side for Nutanix clusters, but fortunately that fills up quick, and even my request before Thanksgiving didn't get approved. So we're on AWS for this, right? So Nutanix clusters is running on bare metal. It will be for Azure. It'll be dedicated hosts in instance types for that. But it enables us to have that same experience, right? I'm going to talk through some of those advantages and things like that in the next slides. But we manage it the same experience, those kind of things, sitting in public cloud. So just to differentiate Nutanix cluster on-prem and Nutanix cluster versus clusters plural, which is the product in public cloud that we could run, to do what we're trying to do and show today, right? So, yes. Let's see if it'll go to the next. There we go. So that timeline that I was mentioning, it's I wanted to put this up here because it's GA for AWS. The Azure one, there's holidays, there's all this stuff. There's stuff that's been coming up. It's pushed back a little bit, but it is in public preview right now. Like I had mentioned, I was trying to get on the early access public preview for this for us as a partner. Didn't happen. Eventually we will be on there and we'll be able to show it. But the point being is that, for what we're doing with AWS, when Azure comes, it's going to be virtually the same type of configuration, setup, those kind of things. So not a lot changes except for, instead of a VPC, we're doing a VNet in Azure. Instead of a bare metal, we're picking a dedicated host instance type. Whatever, there might be a couple of them for Azure. The site-to-site setup, is pretty much the same for your networking team. But other than that, you do all the configuration within the Nutanix console for clusters. It separates you from having to know all the backend stuff from Azure, AWS, all those kind of things, right? So, that GA track is going to be out this year is what we're hoping. So just kind of the timeline for you Azure folks and where that's at. So, why do we need this, right? So this all goes back to that question we just posed for hybrid, right? So we are seeing a huge push to do something hybrid related. So the days of just on-prem are kind of behind us to a certain degree, right? So everybody's exploring some kind of hybrid situation, even if you have multiple customer-owned data centers today. Public cloud is now a viable option across the industry. Doesn't matter what vertical, right? We're talking, healthcare, banking, finance, all of those, right? All the certifications are all there. I was just talking to a government customer last week for FedRAMP, where it's Citrix Cloud Gov and Azure Gov. Everything's there that we need. So hybrid is a viable option. And it's just a matter of how do we get there and what do we use and how do we best make use of our current, the people that we have to do this today, right? So, yeah, so, everybody needs, this unified hybrid multi-cloud approach to this, right? So that's kind of the why, because this is where we're going. With Nutanix clusters, we can get there much easier, right? That combined ease of use, agility, scale, all those things. And then security controls, right? The security controls, you don't need to change a lot of things up because it's AHV both places, or maybe you got ESX, but you still control it and secure it the same way you did on-prem. That's a big one. So again, it's really that, these kind of things, right? That unified platform, that consistent, constructs, the skill sets, right? That I just mentioned. The skill sets are huge from that. It's hard to, I mean, Shane, you can attest to this. It's hard to go become a cloud architect. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just, to your point, it's a complete rework. It's a complete mindset shift. And especially for the people that will try to forklift, you don't want to take your workloads and do a forklift and put it, if you're trying to be Azure native or AWS native, that's not the right way to do it. You typically want to do retooling, refactoring, right? And all that requires a lot of time, effort, and money, right? And that's to your point.
Yeah, so the skill sets is huge, right? Because that's a lot of time and effort. And now maybe you don't have to go become an Azure expert or an AWS expert, right? So seamless migration, elasticity. Was that, Shane?
I just spent all that time. You're saying I don't need to do it anymore?
Not for what we're doing.
Well, that's the simplicity of it, because just think about it. It's just taking
awesome.
just taking AHV out of your data center, put it into someone else's data center, same software, same interface, same licensing, same skill set. The main difference is it's just someone else's hardware, and you're just doing some different networking underneath. But once you're connected with that networking back to your on-prem, you're good to go from there.
Yeah. Yep.
Exactly. So, those are all big. So, specifically, what does it kind of look like, more visually here? So, with that, to get deeper into some of the subjects here, you get your native integration with cloud networking. So as you can see here, the various constructs for Azure and AWS. Again, this kind of visually shows the EC2 bare metal and the Nutanix ready nodes for the dedicated hosts that you're going to have in Azure, the VPC versus the VNet and those kind of things. Visually, this helps out, but it gives you that native integration with the cloud networking, where most of the stuff you configure is just within the Nutanix clusters console, right? So it makes it super easy to deploy and do those things. The migration piece, right? So a big thing that Shane and I end up talking to a lot with our customers that are trying to get to public cloud is, how do we get our VMs there, right? Do we have to use, again, we have a huge focus on the Azure side. So then we know, we have to do Azure migrate and ASR and all these things, right? Well, with Nutanix clusters, we don't have to worry about setting that stuff up, right? No retooling, no refactoring, no using other stuff to get stuff, get these VMs up to the cloud. So again, that's huge. And then, hybrid cloud your way, right? So, I'm going to talk a little bit about it in the next, in these couple other slides, but you can bring your own licenses, for example. Use the same AOS build out there as you are on-prem. Keep things very consistent. You can utilize your own, cloud accounts, credits, the networking you already have set up. You just carve a little portion out of that for clusters, and you're good to go for your VPC in this case. You are in control there. So
yeah, I just add too, like the time. Just a lot of people think about, well, maybe it's costly to go this way, right? But you have to kind of then measure, what are the soft costs for getting your team up to date engineering costs, the certification costs, the time and all the meetings and all the different compliance teams internally to set up governance and all those things. Like people typically aren't tracking all that, right? They're just looking at, okay, this is the hardware and software cost to go this way. Then there's all these other things that happen if you decide to go the other way, which is cloud native. So
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting the more you dig in. So
Yeah, time to value is huge.
oh yeah.
For sure. And this one here, you know, kind of like I was talking about the various nodes, and Jarin's going to talk a little bit about his testing that he's been doing on his nodes and what he's doing at a lot larger scale for his deep diving into clusters on his side. But for us in this, as I mentioned, we're using the Z1D, right? So you got 4 different types. Just think of them as any kind of instance, right, that you pick in a public cloud. The same goes here, right? Bare metal, you got to pick something that makes sense depending on what you're going to put on there. The one thing that we love about clusters is it's up there. Whatever you throw on there is like all you can eat, right? So you can throw, if you can get 100 VMs on there, 150, whatever it is, you're not paying EC2 costs outside of that, what you're paying for the cluster bare metal instance. It really is an all you can eat format, right? So, you know, you pick a node that makes sense and you go with it. So, you know, as you can see here, general purpose, storage optimized, you know, memory optimized. For us, the cheaper one was this Z1D metal, this 24 core, 48 vCPU that we're using. And then, you know, Jarin's using another one for his on the storage side. So you can talk a little bit about that, right? Jarin?
Yeah, I'm sorry, my audio went out there for a second. Just to add, we also, in our testing, we did the i3 nodes in our testing. So we have reference architecture guides out there on the portal for both MCS and PVS. And we saw about 130 Windows 10 desktops per node using the logon VSI knowledge worker profile. And then for Windows Server 2016, we saw about 190 multi-session users per node as well. We picked the i3 because it had the best balance of compute, RAM, and storage, even though it's a little more storage heavy than we need with non-persistent, but it had a good balance of CPU and RAM. And again, those are out there on the portal. We'll be doing similar testing on Azure and having those same reference architecture guides once we get that done with Azure as well.
Thanks, Jay. Yeah, so, you know, just to kind of some of the broader buckets of benefits to you, right? You got this app mobility, it's seamless to you, right? Rather than doing some kind of refactoring or recoding or any of that kind of stuff, you know, the management, the lowered operational costs, and really just to, you know, dive in more on those, you know, as this slick little transition slide showed you, you know, you can easily move stuff from private to public across, right? You know, utilizing Prism Central and what it does to manage and oversee, you know, multiple clusters under one single pane of glass. You know, it makes this super easy without all the additional costs to you guys, right? So this is just, these things are huge from a cost saving standpoint. You know, the downtime, all these things, because when we're talking about cloud migrations, we're always having to discuss, you know, I think it's like the 5 R's, you know, and some of those R's are refactoring, recoding, and rebuilding are 3 of the 5. All of those, depending on what, you know, that may be some old app or something that just, you know, how do we make it better? How do we think about it in a different term going to public cloud? You can't just think of everything as just an IaaS lift and shift. And what do we do? Well, with Nutanix, it takes all the thinking game out of it, right? With clusters, because you can run everything here or there the same way, right? You don't have to really worry about that and saving costs by going to maybe something on the PaaS side or whatever, right? You can just keep things easy and fast to get there. Again, it's that whole, you know, time to value discussion, right? So that's the unified infrastructure management. Again, Prism Central, one console to manage everything. Those day-to-day operational tasks and the governance and predictive capability capacity, you know, across the clouds. It also has Beam integration. So if you're not familiar with Beam, I'll kind of show it on the console later. Unfortunately, I noticed my trial has expired, but I can't really go into it. But Beam is you know, Nutanix's side of things where they can really give you, they can really watch what you're using out there in any public cloud and help you manage the costs there and what, help you, do some things different to save money and those kind of things. So Clusters has, direct beam integration for that as well. But yeah, for the unified infrastructure management piece, that's huge. It just makes things, much better for you guys. And that's across virtual machines, containers, storage, so on and so forth. So, I just want to, I can't really stress that enough for the management side of things. That's the management operational side, especially when you're dealing with, maybe a few engineers or admins that have to manage this stuff as you move to public cloud. I don't know. That's probably the number one thing, just from the unified management and the ease of doing so. I can't stress it enough. I honestly can't how nice that is.
Yeah, one thing to add there, the main takeaway is that once you're outside of the cluster operations, as far as create, destroy, add nodes, remove nodes, hibernate and resume, but all the day-to-day operations are the same Prism interface that you have on-prem. So there's no relearning, the same pane of glass. It can even be the same Prism Central managing multiple clusters across on-prem as and cloud as well, depending on your requirements. So it's all familiar interfaces and not a bunch of learning curve there when it comes to management.
100%. Yeah. So then it lowers, that in turn lowers operational costs. Again, just what I was mentioning, right? So the burstability, the refactoring, being able to hibernate, right? We're gonna kind of show that, but we're not gonna hibernate our node during this because that does take some time. But you can literally hibernate the cluster, as you're not using it. So we're going to talk about where does that make sense. We got an AMA at the end of this. We're hoping you guys have some questions. We're just going to have an open roundtable, kind of discuss those things and where it makes sense. But the fact is, you can hibernate this bad boy, and I'll kind of show the extreme cost savings you get out of that.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're only incurring storage costs when it's hibernated. You're not incurring compute costs. So think about maybe your DR situation or bursting scenario when you don't need the actual compute and you're back to a low use period. Either take some nodes out of the cluster, or if the cluster is not in use at all, hibernate the cluster. Don't incur the compute cost and only incur minimum storage cost while it's hibernated.
Yeah, because bare metal instances, and nobody's gonna lie about that. They're not cheap, right? No matter which node you pick on the bare metal side of things, you're taking that whole node, right? So they're it's going to be $4 or $5 an hour to run. So they're not cheap, but you can throw anything on there then that you want to throw on there. So they're expensive, and being able to hibernate it, let's say for whatever you're using it for, we'll talk about that, seasonal workers or something. Maybe 2 months you don't need it. Boom, hibernate it. Then it's just very minimal cost. S3 bucket storage in this case, probably blob storage on the Azure side when that comes, but. Yeah, and then you can recover quickly. We've done it, I don't know how many times already so far, just getting ready for this. So yeah, so then one last thing is kind of on the license mobility from my standpoint. You can they have various ways to license from a Nutanix side of thing. Obviously from the AWS Azure side, it's all about reserved instances, consumption costs, those kind of things that you can't get away from that with public cloud, right? That's a separate line item, something that you got to worry about, no matter if it's bare metal or regular EC2 instances. But from a Nutanix perspective, you can, they give us a few different ways to license these things, right? And we're going to talk about that as we have a question there. I won't go too much into that, with the cloud commit, the pay as you go, bring your own. But, this specifically is you can bring your own. You can basically take your own licenses that you already have. And let's say when Azure gets here, you want to have a clusters in Azure, clusters in AWS, so on and so forth, with those. You can move stuff around licensing wise. So the ultimate mobility is there. And then, Jaron had reminded us today about the VDI licensing. So, if you aren't familiar, VDI licensing is a different way of licensing a cluster for specifically VDI workloads that could potentially be much cheaper from that perspective. So again, more flexibility there. And I don't know, Jaron, if you have anything on that you want to mention. But
yeah, the main thing with the portability is that, like Oz was saying, you can start with one cloud today, move to another cloud tomorrow. From a Nutanix standpoint, have multi-cloud. CBL licensing, reallocate those, or if you're doing like a DR type scenario, our VDI licensing, which is per user, and it does allow you to do DR as well without having to purchase additional licensing for the cluster. We're also doing some retooling of our portfolio licensing, so stay tuned for that as well.
Yeah, I just want to mention too, like we're talking specifically Nutanix clusters, right? Everything that's applying here as far as the simplicity and all these things apply to, because I think there was like 9 or 10 people that weren't, Nutanix customers today. There is a whole on-premises solution, right? And it can work on, Dell hardware, HP hardware, or kind of super micro, right? Because it's really software. It's a software-based solution. So you do have and there's multiple different node types and offerings for the on-premises option. So you can, if you are a traditional 3-tier customer today, and you have your Pure, your UCS, and that's just, how you've been, you're on VMware, and you're potentially looking to do some sort of expansion. Maybe it's a new project. You want to just break off UC workloads. You can have that Nutanix solution, that modular solution, and have that locally, and then look to expand 2 clusters on AWS today and then Azure in the future. So all the same simplicity, all the things that are being mentioned does apply to your on-premises environment as well.
And then also too, I just want another point out about the licensing portability and stuff today. We have a lot of customers who have been, like I said earlier, every time I talk about clusters, whether it's through partner webinars or direct webinars or through CUGC, Azure is always asked about. And with Azure pretty much coming pretty soon, you can start today testing in AWS, because from a standpoint of the clusters portal, some of the workflow stuff, it's, that side's going to be the same. Underneath in the Azure consoles will be a little bit different, but the same concept, a lot of the same processes and workflows will be the same. So you can start today evaluating on AWS. And then once Azure is live and you have access, you can easily just move those workloads over to
great
Azure
point.
once it's live.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Because it's literally, anyone can just get started. It's point and click, pay as you go. So you can really start evaluating it right away. There was a question that was asked in the chat, and Jarin, I saw you answered it there, but just in case no one has eyes on the chat, that's kind of part of the group here. Basically, does PVS, does this strategy work with provisioning services, right? With Citrix, and as Jarian mentioned, it does, right? Because it's technically, you own the hardware, you're running bare metal, right? You're not using the cloud from a cloud networking perspective, and that's where some of those challenges are. This is all running native on top of the Nutanix hardware. In AHV, so that same support is fully going to work just fine.
Yep. Yeah, a good point about the chat. I wasn't even looking at the chat, so thanks, guys. Yeah, PVS does work. So Shane's going to be taking here a little bit about the Citrix side, and we're going to specifically talk about what we're using, which is MCS. But yes, PVS is a viable option there. So
yeah. That's we won't start the MCS PVS debates. Not PVS is back in action on Azure.
We're not going down that road. No.
Awesome, man. Yeah. So let's I guess what we'll do here is because there's been kind of a good mix in the room of some folks that are on older versions of Citrix. So we'll talk a little bit at a high level here about kind of the Citrix Value Add or Nutanix Value Add for Citrix EUC environments. And then how obviously that same value add will port over to Nutanix clusters. But yeah, so basically kind of the big thing here is, with Nutanix, and it has been for years, a lot of these same core benefits have been the same through the years and just keep getting better. But the way Nutanix is inherently designed is it's basically, it's localized hardware. So like in the hyperconverged platform, you essentially have compute, you have your storage, and then you have your hypervisor, right? And then across those nodes basically is a distributed fabric from a storage standpoint that creates a centralized storage solution essentially. So you don't have to, like if you're in the traditional 3-tier world where you have to go and create volumes and things like that and go over some sort of ISCSI or your fiber channel fabric, like that doesn't exist here. This basically is your data, your workloads run local to the node. So if you have a 10 node environment, a 50 node environment, a couple hundred node environment, we have customers that are a couple hundred nodes, you'll always have the same exact performance because those VMs are running local to the actual node, right? Which is pretty powerful. So, what does that mean, from a Citrix perspective, when we talk about provisioning, for instance, one of the things with machine creation services is if you had traditional, 3-tier is technically, and you'd end up with, from a scaling standpoint, you'd have multiple volumes, right? And then now that image has to be copied across multiple volumes. So from a Nutanix perspective, for all intents and purposes, it's one big data store. You can still break those containers up, more from a usability standpoint or feature standpoint. Maybe some containers it's more of a logical construct for like compression and encryption and things like that. But at the end of the day, you could have a single container and it's fully scalable. So it makes MCS provisioning extremely fast. And another technology that's built in was called their shadow clone technology, which basically on demand, it'll determine based on kind of the read-write profile that, you have a particular master image. So it's going to go ahead and automatically start pulling the bits of the data to each of the nodes locally. So again, your reads will be 100% local across all those nodes. So again, if you look at any of the reference architectures that Jarian and his team works on, and you look at scaling to 1,000+ users, that performance is going to be pretty much linear because of how the data locality works, which is pretty awesome. Adding on to that, the other big thing that why we like using Nutanix for our UC environments is cost, right? From a hypervisor standpoint, right? There's VMware has a heavy cost to it. You might be a VMware shop, that's awesome, you love it, that's great. But from an EUC perspective, specifically non-persistent workloads, even, right? I mean, you're talking about like just throwaway workloads. I mean, why are you going to pay that heavy VMware cost when there's no cost to AHV, right? It's built into the hypervisor. So that's another great reason why we like to use Nutanix for EUC environments. Persistent desktops work just fine as well. There's native dedupe and compression built into the environment, into those containers to help there. Native provisioning services. So another great add-on here is the ability to replicate cross site. So we're talking from a clusters perspective here in this diagram, from private to public cloud, but maybe you have, a multi-site on-premises environment, you have, locally connected data centers. You can basically put your master image in what's called a protection domain. And that basically does inter-replication between those clusters natively. So, and we're going to show that today on how you can migrate that master image. So when we spun up that AWS cluster, the Nutanix cluster on bare metal, we didn't have any images, right? We literally just built an iOS, we built a cloud connector, so it'd be native in that environment. And we'll talk about what a cloud connector is and whatnot. And then we basically just use a protection domain to bring that Windows 10 image over, and it 100% worked right away. We didn't even have to boot it on the other side, right? We literally just, protection domained it over, created a snapshot, created a new catalog. And because the way we abstract our policies, like, for VDA registration, it automatically got up, registered, and we were able to broker sessions, which is pretty awesome. So the other thing is just, again, I think we talked about, so from a provisioning perspective, Citrix has a provisioning SDK. So if you go to you go into, your Citrix console and you go to create a new hosting connection, Citrix, part of that kind of partnership a few years back, Citrix, actually it's more than a few years now, Nutanix created an AHV plugin, which essentially once you load that on your cloud connector or your delivery controllers, you'll actually see Nutanix or AHV as a actual provisioning mechanism now, which is pretty awesome. So that kind of covers kind of the additional value add. For us, again, it's simplicity. People managing EUC, you don't have to worry about. You typically aren't the storage people, right? Those are kind of teams are segregated. So this allows you to really manage the whole stack. You don't have to have that traditional silo, the political stuff that happens internally. Like EUC can be managed on its own as its own kind of delivery stack altogether. And that's really why we love, Citrix on Nutanix, and particularly clusters, because again, it's that same experience across the board. Provisioning, Jarian covered, PVS is supported, is native, which is pretty great. If you are a PVS shop, then all power to you. So some of the use cases, where does this make sense? Citrix, so we'll just build this out here. So Citrix on clusters, essentially. So, being able to kind of scale your EUC infrastructure. So we're actually going to show that today. So if for some reason, there's like a global pandemic that happens, right? I mean, we've never seen that before, right? So, if something like that happens, I can tell you, like when that first started a couple of years back, amazing, we can say a couple of years now, but when it started late, I think it was early 2020. I mean, it was like, we've been talking EUC virtual desktops for years, and it was like, yeah, we'll just use VPN. Now, as everyone was calling us, we got to stand up our environment, and we're able to, that's where the cloud really shined for a lot of our customers.
This started like 20 years ago. It feels like 20 years.
Yeah. I'm still, well, the good thing is I'm still in my underwear. So nothing changed there. Just don't ask me to stand up, you know.
Thanks.
But yeah, no, it's so burstability is a big win there from a cluster's perspective. Business continuity, you know, being able to build out a secondary disaster recovery site in any cloud region, right? So, you know, from I say any cloud region, but from a Nutanix perspective, right? If you're talking clusters, it's AWS today, as Oz mentioned, and Azure in the future. But being able to build there, we talked about dynamic elasticity for bursting scenarios where you kind of pay as you go, scaling out your infrastructure, you know, as the load increases, you know, whether that's, you know, contractor shift changes, some kind of disaster event that happens, you know, with that license portability, it allows you to kind of move things. I mean, let's talk about, you know, cloud outages, right? I mean, it's been a rough year or last year, I should say. We're already still 2022 now. It's crazy, 2022. So 2021, I mean, there was big AWS outages. There was Azure outages, right? Even though you build in, you know, you design for failure, availability zones, you know, you have all the different redundancies, capabilities built in. You know, one thing like Azure AD can go out, or DNS, right? And the whole show caves, right? So being able to have that simplicity where you have your you know, your environment in AWS and Azure in the very near future when this is supported is pretty awesome. From a redundancy standpoint, that's true multi-cloud redundancy. So, and the other thing is, you know, if you're doing any kind of load testing or migration tests, you can easily, you know, move those workloads back and forth. We do this for customers all the time with the protection domains, easily move them, you know, kind of back and forth between, you know, between data centers and stuff like that when failing over and whatnot. I guess anything you want to add in here, Jarian, on the use cases?
Yeah, just our two biggest use cases that we're seeing from customers are DR, so business continuity. So instead of having to worry about the hardware, the power, the cooling, the maintenance of a physical DR location, they're collapsing those DR sites into looking at clusters to use as a DR site instead. And the other one is bursting, so that on-demand elasticity and rapid scale when they need extra resources. Where they don't have the actual kit on-prem, the infrastructure to handle that demand. Like Shane mentioned, the pandemic, when we saw a lot of people shifting to remote work and they didn't have the actual capacity on-prem to meet that need, they started looking at cloud, and this is just an easy extension of that if you're running Nutanix on-prem today. So those are two pretty big use cases we're seeing for EUC.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the big thing when you're doing multi-site is like, you know, how do you maintain that master image across the board, right? And that protection domain is key for that. Being able to maintain it, not have to worry about, you know, going, because we have customers that, you know, have, you know, 2, 3, 4 sites, and in some cases they're managing that master image individually, and then they do updates and they miss something. This will keep it consistent across all sites. And in some cases, maybe they're running a different hypervisor. With protection domain, as you mentioned, it's agnostic from a hypervisor perspective. So so kind of the cloud architecture, what we have here. So basically what we're talking about and kind of showing what we're going to see here is on AWS, bare metal. So the cool thing is when you see kind of the provisioning, and Oz will talk through that as we kind of show the environment, you really don't need to know anything about Amazon. You could literally just, you know, go and create an account, not know, like say you're an Azure customer, you know what, VNets are, you know what subnets are, you know about peering and how those all kind of interconnect and user-defined routes. And you know that a VPC has something similar to a VNet, but you really have no idea how it all works and the intra-routing and all that stuff. It doesn't matter, right? Because when you go and create that, what's called a stack, or you go to create that, that bare metal node, it has what's called an AWS stack, which is literally the entire process, all the underlying NAC gateways and all the different things that you need to do with the VPC to set up that environment is 100% automated by Nutanix through that process, which was really awesome. Because again, it abstracts having to know the underlying fabric. Once it comes up, you just connect to that cluster like any other cluster, right? So from our perspective, right, I mean, sure, you could, enable access from a management perspective from the internet. Obviously, that's not recommended. You'd want something like what in the Azure world, it's, ExpressRoute. Over here, it's AWS Direct, or we did what's called a site-to-site VPN. Everyone's familiar with that. So we did that to our lab, and that's how we were able to then start transferring our workload, right? So with our protection domain, our Windows 10 desktop up to AWS. So inside of basically what we call, so once you have kind of the networking done on the cluster, you create another subnet, right? And that would basically be kind of the Citrix infrastructure is going to run on there. So just talk for a second about the Citrix infrastructure, because I know we have some folks that that are on kind of traditional Citrix architecture. So at a high level, like the biggest thing was like years ago. I mean, we're going 5+ years ago now. I mean, Citrix 4 to 5 years ago, Citrix created Citrix Cloud. And really it was about kind of taking that, it started from what ShareFile was a control plane, right? So taking that whole management framework of what you deal with from a Citrix perspective, SQL and delivery controllers and storefront and director and licensing. And they slowly over the years started peeling back all those infrastructure components and bringing them into what's called their control plane. And that control plane is highly available across AWS and Azure. And now, there's going to be plans there and for certain aspects for GCP as well, where you're looking at highly redundant control planes. So what that means is then, your environment, you don't have to worry about constantly, upgrading your environment, right? We don't have to worry about, and specifically in multi-site scenarios, dealing with SQL and the high availability groups and worrying about that across multiple sites. All you worry about is what's called cloud connectors. And there's, I'm simplifying it. And I love if you guys want to ask questions, and maybe we can go super deep in this stuff. But you have this concept called cloud connectors, right? And so your delivery controllers go away. You have this concept called cloud connectors and this concept called resource locations, which we'll show. So each of your data centers has what's called a resource location. In there, you have what's called a cloud connector. And think of that as like a delivery controller light, right? It handles enumeration, it handles brokering. We'll store your local host cache for offline access, but it will actually do an outbound connection only to the cloud. So you're not worrying about inbound connections, outbound connection only. And then which will then allow you to basically broker connection to your Active Directory from an identity perspective, to your hypervisor on premises or any location, right? When we show that here in the GUI, you'll be able to see that from any location, what the options are, right? From a hosting perspective. And this enables portability. It simplifies the environment, so you only have to worry about the cloud connectors. Storefront could technically still be used, and we'll talk about reasons why you would potentially still use Storefront. But what we're using in our lab, you see here, access to the right is traditional Citrix Gateway on the ADC, right? Traditional Storefront. In the lab, we're using 100% cloud platform as a service. We're using Gateway as a service that's got POPs or points of presence all over the world. And we're using Workspace, so not even using Storefront environment. All we literally have in AWS and on-prem are cloud connectors. And then we have basically our resources, which is what's most important to you, right? Your apps, your data, your image. That's the number one thing you should be spending your time on, not managing infrastructure, right? So anyways, that's a super high level about the architecture, and it really enables simplicity around multi-site portability. So as you can see here, bare metal is what we're running on, and then over here, that's traditional on-premises, and then this is on the cloud on this side. Yeah, so with that said, and we'll dig more into this. So we want to get into the demo and stuff, right? So we want to get in and kind of show you stuff. So kind of make this quick. The guys did a great job covering all the executive highlights. I'll just spend a minute on this or two here, but basically, Oz talked about it, avoid application refactoring. You'll not have to go in and think about how you're going to refactor, how to resize that application so it's cloud native. You get really used to awesome performance on premises, especially if you're a Nutanix customer, right? When you go into the cloud, you're going to realize that things don't perform as fast as you think they do, right? There's a lot of shared infrastructure. You really have to architect and pick the right right instance sizes, the right storage types to make sure things are operating the way you think they're going to operate. You're not going to get that same performance that you're used to from an on-premises environment. So being able to, avoid having to refactor and stay with native Nutanix is a pretty good job. We talked about the, keeping the same operations, security models that are in place that you guys have across all the different teams and compliance. You don't need to relearn that for AWS and Azure. Managing on-prem, Nutanix and public cloud, which you'll see today, which we're going to show in Prism Central, essentially in a single interface, right? Predictive and constant performance because you have a bare metal node. It's dedicated to you. A drive fails, you got to send remote hands. In the Azure world, you don't worry about that. Actually, and we talked about that from an auto healing perspective. If a node fails, it automatically will just kind of do its thing, eject the node, bring in a new node on the fly. I mean, that's a pretty awesome deal. It's not like you got to call up, Joe Schmo. He's got to go run over to the data center for the physical node. It's all done automated, kind of that invisible concept that Nutanix has been pitching for years. Scale on demand, hibernate, resume. We talked about that. Big one here is the micro waste, right? So you're kind of got these t-shirt size instances in AWS and Azure, which is like, 2 by 4, 4 by 8, 4 by 16, right? And you're kind of stuck by that, right? On premises, maybe your environment doesn't, your typical workload kind of fits in the middle. Maybe it doesn't need 16 or 32 gigs of RAM. Maybe it needs less. So you'll be able to actually right size things the way you need to, because you own that entire node. We talked about PBS support. License mobility obviously is an option there, which is great. You give me the ability to kind of be portable with your licensing, and then predictable performance. So with that said, let's
One
talk
thing
about
real quick I want
Yep.
to add.
Yeah.
And just think about the main takeaway here of anything today you're seeing. Just think about flexibility and portability. And what I mean by that is we had conversations with customers where they're afraid of cloud lock-in. They might have a strategy to where they're migrating everything to native Azure or native AWS or native GCP today. And, maybe a new staff comes in or direction changes. It could be Azure today. It could be AWS tomorrow. We have some customers that have gone to cloud and are pulling back to on-prem as well. So think about how easy that is to, or think about without this, how much work it is to go migrate over and then migrate to another cloud vendor or migrate back. That's that fear of cloud lock-in and that waste of effort spent in moving workloads around. With this, there's no lock-in to your particular cloud vendor. You can be on-prem, you can be AWS, you can be soon Azure, and in the future others. But guess what? You're not refactoring, you're not retooling, you're just moving that image around, moving those workloads around using our native built-in protection and replication capability. So I just want to make sure you stress that flexibility and portability.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for adding that in. You're 100% right, and that's something that we're definitely excited about, and hopefully the folks on the call are as well. So just kind of going in here. So what we're going to be showing at a high level here is we're going to kind of do a quick walkthrough of clusters. I'm going to pass it off to Oz. He's going to do kind of a walkthrough of clusters, and then we'll send it back to myself. I'll talk through the CVADs environments. And we're going to kind of show some of this. Some of it, unfortunately, we had some issues as we were kind of doing our load test. We realized there's something going on. We do a lot of testing with the product team. And so with that, we're on a lot of tech previews in our tenant. And there's something going on with some of the launching that's happened. And we're able to actually see that with doing our load test and whatnot. So basically, we're going to show kind of the seamless multi-cluster management. We're going to show seamless failover. How do we migrate? And that kind of ties into the image portability. How do we take that Windows 10 image and how do we migrate over to AWS Nutanix clusters? What does autoscale look like for Citrix, and how do you tweak autoscale to allow for cloud bursting scenarios? We'll show that. We'll talk about auto provisioning, kind of a PowerShell script that Citrix has with some logic that basically will kind of build out additional nodes based on kind of high and low, or build out, not nodes, I should clarify, build out additional VMs, right? Based on high and low watermarks. And then we'll actually talk about the hibernate and resume and kind of show what that workflow looks like. Before we get into the demo, just kind of talk for a second. As we mentioned, you'll see a little bit about Automate at a high level. We'll show kind of how we're using it from a robotic process automation standpoint for our load testing. We'll talk, we probably won't have time to kind of dig into the control up aspect, but we use that in our lab and for all our customers as well. So with that said, time for the demo. So I'm gonna pass it off to you, Oz.
Yeah, give me a second here to get situated. Chatting away with Todd here. He's asking about the secret labs chair. I'm all just got that. That's why I said,
that's awesome, man.
We're serious when we got secret labs. Like we're serious about sitting, right?
You can see, yeah. Yeah, when how much we sit, man. It's I gotta sit on gold, man. My ass has got to be just nice and just kind of comforted.
Yep. So let me get I got a screen share here. Can I do that?
Yeah, do your thing. Yeah, grab that and then grab the screen and then I'll pull up.
Give me a second to switch here.
All good.
Yeah, we'll go. We don't need that anymore. Let me bring some. So what I'm going to show here, really, I want to show some things just to kind of lay the land, right? So I'm going to bring this up. Start from kind of the top here from the Citrix Cloud perspective. So I'm going to lay it out for what we were talking about, right? So now we've kind of got through the slides on what it is, what it's, where, why we're doing this, how it benefits you, so on and so forth. So, just to take, 10 or 15 minutes to show what we want to show, if you're not familiar from a Citrix Cloud standpoint, let me just get in here. Hopefully none of my stuff's timed out by now, but
yeah, actually mine was timed. I'm logging back in. So
yeah. So I'll get into that. I'm going to show the Nutanix cluster side of things with the portal there, so you can kind of see how easy it is to do some of these operations that we just talked about. Again, the Citrix Cloud side of things, the EC2 backend side of things, which this is what you are protected from needing to know a lot of this outside of your network guy that needs to go do the kind of some of the network security groups and the site to site, right? We had to do something with a network security group. That even that Jarn's bringing up with their teams to get it all underneath the one console, which is really nice. And so really from a Citrix Cloud standpoint, we have a few zones in our lab. We've had webinars, from our Azure side of things for our Azure environment, multi-session, and what we're doing there. This one specifically, as you can see here, it's just another zone. So Citrix Cloud then sees our AWS cluster in North Virginia is literally just another resource location, right? As Shane said, it's pretty simplistic, right? We got cloud connectors, and that's it, right? We got our host connection that ties us into that, plumbs us in, and we got our machine catalog, right? So there's not a whole lot needed there because we're not throwing an ADC up there in this case, or storefront, or none of that, right? For Citrix Cloud Services, it's just this, right? So our East Virginia AWS is really just another zone. So part of the thing that we're doing here for bursting is in the zone, we have basically users in some of these zones, right? So we have zone preference set up for bursting out there and what we can do in there. So we got our on-prem here with Overland Park. And then we got some of our other ones that aren't applicable to this, but that's essentially what we have from there. And you can also see those then basically under your resource locations in Citrix Cloud, just to kind of show you. It's as simple as adding, your cloud connectors out there, and then they pop right in here, and off you go. And even in our case, we're using the tech preview, or you can use FAS servers if you're familiar with the federation side of things. We're actually using FAS servers across the resource locations as part of that. So I didn't go build a federation server to tie in with our Azure ID identity piece. We're just using the same one because it's just easier way, to do that for us in lab purposes. Now, production wise, we'd have FAS servers out there for federation, but for us, we didn't have to do that. So we just tied it in there, threw some cloud connectors up there. We're good, right? So that's that's basically the Citrix Cloud side of things. I'm not really going to show you the identities. We're tied into Azure AD in this case. None of this other stuff really matters. And then looking at the Nutanix cluster side, I guess just to explain a little bit for the machine catalogs when this pops back in. It's always slower when you're sitting here watching. But from a machine catalog standpoint, what we're doing is we're feeding in basically an AWS catalog and an Overland Park catalog into the same delivery group. So we're taking that and we're basically plopping that into this one that we call OP and AWS. So essentially we're feeding the same desktops from two different catalogs into one delivery group. We're consuming, we've proven out that we're consuming, like in our case, 5 desktops on-prem. Before then we burst out to AWS to start spinning up users out in AWS. So really slick solution for being able to use all your on-prem desktops before moving them and using the burst capability out to public cloud. So it's really nice. From our perspective, again, Nutanix clusters is all you can eat. So you could theoretically just keep them all powered up there and utilize it as you will, right? Because you're paying for the bare metal instance. You can utilize it however you want to, but just to show kind of that burst and using those on-prem first and going out there, that's kind of the lay of the land of what we have set up there. And then again, it's just another hosting connection in here, right? So it sees it as obviously Nutanix AHV. It's going out to AWS versus the Overland Park scenario. So that's really kind of how it ties into the Citrix Cloud side of things. Now from a Nutanix cluster side, again, you get all this set up, your organization, customer account, all that stuff. This is what you see, right? So you see here, this is where we are, North Virginia. Up here are some of the actions you can do easily, like updating capacity, configuration, hibernating, those kind of things, even terminating. You can do it all from here, and then it goes in the back end and starts doing all its fancy stuff, right? That you don't have to worry about. So here we're not going to do it. But for example, I could easily do another node if I wanted to, right? So I could come in here. I'm definitely not going to do it during the lab, but you could come in here. Of course, I'd have to check my quotas, make sure I have enough quota for my AWS account. And then I could add hosts. I could be a big dog like Jari and do 16 of those, right?
Yeah.
That cost us though, so probably don't want to do that. But yeah, point being is that you can do all of those easy operations straight from the actions menu up here, and then we've just been hibernating from here, right? This will go into its hibernation scenarios when you do that. As you can see, here's a wake up when we resume it. Here's when we hibernate it. We got a lot of these underneath here from what we're doing for the various hibernate and resume functions. Point being, it's all under this, right? It's all under this console here. Super sweet. Shows you your hosts. We got the one, not too fancy there. Some other stuff here, but really this is where it's all at, right? You could even launch Prism Element from there. We're actually using Prism Element from our on-prem because we got the site tied in. We don't have any public access, so we disallowed that. So I'm not going to launch it from there because it won't launch from my home PC here.
And just to add one thing real quick too,
Yeah.
this portal here that Oz is going through, it shows cloud provider Amazon, but whether you're Amazon or Azure or whatever cloud vendor we add in the future, this whole portal is the same, right? So when you provision the cluster and go through, you just pick the cloud provider, your cloud account, and go through. But this portal look and feel is all the same as far as deploying clusters, expanding, shrinking, hibernating, and resuming and destroying clusters is all done in this portal.
Yep. So that's the clusters view. And then just to kind of show on the back end, nothing, not going to go through any of this because that's all what we hide you from. But here is my cluster, right? So obviously do not stop, terminate, whatever, because you do it from the cluster console. Point being, you don't want to go in here in EC2 and jank with it, which is not what you want anyway. You want to be able to get to it easily from the cluster console. So it's basically just saying, don't go, messing with this thing and doing a stop on it like you would for some of your other random EC2 instances, right? But it's literally just, just a bare metal instance out there, right? From a cost management standpoint, so here's where we get some of the interesting stuff. So, let me bring up Cost Explorer, actually. I think that'll show it better. This here is kind of what it'll show you the significant kind of savings just from a small snapshot of what we've been using it going up and down every day. So I want to highlight this because this will be even more drastic as you have more nodes. We have one node. So, for us, for example, here's we spent $107. So Shane and I are in there, we're doing stuff for 9, 10, 11, 12 hours, whatever. Shane was up till 5 in the morning one of these days. So, $100 a day, whatever, right? So then we push hibernate. We hibernated for the weekend, $3, $2, right? Because what it does is it flushes all that to S3 storage, bucket storage. So literally all that we're using here is storage costs for the little amount of data. We got the VMs that we got at that time. We only had maybe 5 VMs, cloud connector, those kind of things out there on the cluster in one node. So, we didn't have a ton of data because the more data you have, that cost would go up a little bit. But point being is you can see the drastic drop on those 2 days. And then as we spun it up and lose it a little bit the next day, and then, boom, boom, we used it quite a bit yesterday. And then we hibernated again. So today, since we started, from midnight or what on, it's $18. So that's where it gets into where it makes sense. And you can really do this. You could save a lot of costs if you can hibernate and do things depending on how you're going to use it. So I just kind of want to show that from that perspective. That's the back end side of things. Citrix, I guess I don't need to show you that, but what we are using from a desktop standpoint is I've already launched it. This is the desktop that we're in. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty proud we're getting like sub 13-second logins or something crazy. We got session recording in here, which is another thing that we're pretty proud. We love that product. And then just to show, what we talked about stage and lab, we're using EDT with Rendezvous. as the connection all the way through. So you can kind of see that here for what our desktop, pretty plain vanilla desktop with Office, single sign-on, Azure AD, all that. That being said, we're having that little issue maybe with Azure AD. I don't know what it is, where we try to throw a ton of these up at a time and put load on it. And we have some issues on the authentication, not really the authentication side, but the brokering side.
Yeah, I think it's on the gateway service. But yeah, we'll get to the bottom.
We have a ton of tech previews on our tenant for the gateway service. So that being said, who knows? We got like 5 of them enabled for tech preview stuff. So that's what our desktop looks like, right? So and then getting inside here, of course, let me log in real quick. This is where the magic happens too, I suppose. And then this, as you can see, I got Prism Central, right? So Prism Central, that pane of glass, both clusters sitting under here. Let me launch the AWS one from there. We got the ability to quick launch from here. We got the OP one, we got the AWS one. I can easily launch, boom, I'm in Element for that specific cluster. I'm in the OP one here. It's as easy as going underneath. You can manage and look at all the stats and kind of your usage and your VM efficiency, all this stuff, right? Across the board within Prism Central. If you're a Nutanix customer today, you'll be plenty familiar with this stuff. Point being, same pane of glass, multiple clusters. If we had another cluster somewhere else, another one in Azure, all of them under here, right? So this makes it very seamless, very nice to see everything and easily launch into the various Prism elements from one place. So as you can see here, there's the Azure, the AWS one. Same look and feel, again, plays into that whole conversation between the two. You don't have to learn something new. You don't have to figure it out differently or whatever. It's AHV both places. These two are literally the same, just in 2 different places. One's a public, one's on-prem, right?
Yeah, I guess the time is coming up on the thing. So we got like 7 minutes. So you want to show the migrate the image real quick?
Yeah, that was my last thing, is I was just
cool.
going to show real quick on the migrate function here. And let me get to the data protection. And one of the things we were just going to show was that portability, right? We got our master image for basically in here. So let me get here. So as you can see, we got our master image. It's sitting on OP right now. I'm just going to go ahead and migrate it. Select the site, and it'll just take a couple seconds because we wanted something quick there.
Yeah, it's the process we took. Like I said, we literally had no image out there at all on AWS.
Yep, and what you'll see is pretty soon that one it's gone already from this side. As you can see, I got my filter in there. And on this side, assuming this goes okay. There it is. So it's already over there. So at that point, I can start it up, create my snapshot, do whatever I do for my catalogs from a Citrix standpoint. But the point being, it's that quick, right? So that was kind of the last thing I wanted to show from that standpoint. So yeah. Yeah, that's what I had, Shane. I can't honestly, I can't remember what you were gonna go into next.
Yeah, I'll jump over. Yeah, I'm gonna show some of the auto scale stuff. We only have a few minutes, so I'll focus in on the auto scale, and we want to jump to close out real quick. So yeah, let me just show the screen. So yeah, so the goal, obviously we kind of showed the cluster side of things. So now we want to show basically the next step is kind of launching some sessions. Obviously this automate, I'm not gonna go through the whole product, but basically it's robotic automation solution, and we're using it now for synthetic load testing. So we had some pre-plans that were created, like this one here for launching desktops. So I'm just gonna generate a new test. We'll just do 15, because from what we're seeing, there's an issue that happens and we're still tracking it down, but I'll just do 3 users every 30 seconds. This is as you kind of tune auto scale and all those different things, you can change the ramp up policies. And we'll just say updated test for webinar. You put a test node in there, so it's tracked. Hit run test, which will kind of kick it off. And while that's kicking off, I'll jump over to the auto scale console. We'll just kind of let that do its thing. And what it does, it kind of talks to the robotic users, and those robotic users basically run in like, think of it, you have what's called inject launchers basically. And those launchers basically sit, you can see it's already working. They have RDP sessions that basically simulate these robotic users, and they'll do everything runs from the front end. So actually go ahead and simulate exactly what the user is clicking on using, image recognition, OCR, and various technologies built in. So as Oz mentioned, we're using Azure AD, right? So as soon as we go to log in, it sends us over to Azure AD. We authenticate, we pre-created 50 load test accounts. So that's what it's basically doing here. It's logging in, and then it's going to kind of kick them off there. So we'll let that kind of do its thing, start launching some sessions. You can see the other ones are kind of going as we go, right? So jumping back over to the console here on the Citrix Cloud side. So looking at our delivery group, as Oz mentioned, we have 2 catalogs in the delivery group. So that basically gives us the ability to kind of seamlessly broker sessions. So one thing that when we're talking about the zones is you can do kind of a zone preference, right? So when you're doing multi-data centers and things like that, you can say, hey, these users prefer this data center. So what we did was we said over on the AWS region, actually, where is it? East, AWS East, I think, or sorry, right here. We have the automate loader users. Come on.
Right.
Taking a second.
I was looking for our loader users and I couldn't find them. They're gone all. So.
Wait a second. Okay, so I mean, maybe that's what's going on with the preference, Christine. That's interesting. So what we had here, I don't know why it's gone, but
yeah, just put them back.
Basically added in here. We basically were able to browse a specific directory. Or sorry, we're able to actually come in here and search automate, I think was the name of our users. We were able to find those, that specific group, automate loader group, basically, and just go ahead and save that. So what that basically does is that says, hey, we're going to make sure that these users, when they go to launch within this delivery group, that they prefer, say it says it's already added. For some reason, it's not showing in the UI, but it's already there. Basically, I don't know why it's not showing in the UI, but anyways, point being is it's going to prefer this side or this resource location, which is the on-premises location first, and then it's going to go up to Azure. Actually, that's why it wasn't showing. I think about it, was because we tied it to Overland Park, right? Which you could see. Oh, I guess it's not showing. Wait. Yeah, so you can see right here we have the automate loaders, right? So those users are tied to this zone, which means that they launch there first. So now that we start there first, right? So what that means is, your sessions are initially going to launch there, and then they're going to burst. And how do we get them to burst over into the other data center? Well, there's no more sessions available here, so it's automatically going to go over to the other zone. But if we look at the actual delivery group here, we can see there's a setting called Manage Autoscale. So Autoscale is a technology that Citrix has that really handles kind of its intelligent, power management operations, power on, power off operations, and actually, how it handles basically, if you're on, Azure, AWS, not Nutanix, obviously, you could put your cost per instance and it'll actually scale that out for you and give you an idea what the costs are. You can create different schedules from a peak time perspective, weekend, weekday, or different schedules of when it boots those up. But the key, what we're going to be doing is the capacity buffer. So what it'll actually do is, as you're doing your testing, you'll determine, okay, we're coming up to, we're almost full from a load index standpoint. We're gonna go boot another 25% of the desktops. So what's cool is with this restrict auto scale, this is how you really do the, this is how you really do the cloud bursting. Is you basically say auto scale is only going to apply to these desktops that are tagged with this particular tag, right? So what that basically says is, my other desktops, they're on-prem, they're going to be online all the time. I don't care about them, but I care about the costs associated with, and also, how my performance is going to look on the cloud side. So I'll go ahead and tag those desktops. So if you go look at these desktops, you can see they're particularly tagged. You can see that these are the ones that are in the AWS cluster. They're tagged with this particular tag for bursting. So that means as we go and scale out our session, they're basically going to go ahead and auto scale is going to go and boot those VMs up on the other side, which is pretty powerful.
Super seamless and super sweet with autoscale doing that for us. And you may say, why with AWS do we need to worry about it? Well, with clusters, even though it's all you can eat, maybe you don't want to fill that whole node up. You get, the more pressure you can take off the actual VMs you want to have up there, that autoscale can help with that, right? So yeah,
and you can see, like, we launched 15 sessions, and of them a bunch. This is kind of what as we were kind of slamming the gateway service, we started seeing. We didn't see it as we were just testing on our own and doing all our kind of stuff that we were doing here. As you can actually see, there's an error that's happening through the gateway service where it's saying resource isn't available. The resource is available, it's fully registered. It's something that's happening on the gateway service side. We don't have ADCs. On some of our larger customers, we obviously do ADCs in the tenants. So we were just doing testing of the gateway server. So it could be something with one of our tech preview features, but Automate was able to bring that to the forefront because of how it was doing its launching and automating that. So I don't think we have enough sessions launched to show that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, what we have successfully proven though is that, it's super easy to utilize whatever you have on-prem and what he just described, and then burst up to our cluster in AWS without a problem, right? Brokers it same, you don't even know the difference. This contractor desktop just launches up there seamlessly. It's pretty sweet, right? So that's the main thing here, is being able to use it for those kind of situations and show that. And I know we're coming up against the time, but we have a few more things to talk about. So any of you that need to drop, sure, you sure can, but we really hope that maybe a few of you could stay on, because we're just gonna come towards the end and maybe take some questions from you that do have questions, and kind of talk about our offerings there. So give us another 5 minutes. So if you can.
Yeah, and just to wrap this up, there's a lot we could talk about with auto scale. And we're just doing auto scale with Windows 10, but when you get into multi-session, there's more stuff that comes into account there when you're dealing with load index now at the machine level, and we do Citrix policies from a load management standpoint. You do vertical or horizontal load balancing. So we're kind of doing it a simple like single session. So basically, it's really just from a power management perspective, powering them on as our demand increases or decreases. So there is a PowerShell script that Citrix created, which we went through. We got that set up. It was just working intermittently. So we worked with the product team, and we've sent some notes over to see. It was created back in 2019, so maybe something changed. But basically, what it does is just at a high level, I can just show you here because it's just easier to see. If you just look up here, dynamic provisioning, we'll put a note for the folks, but it basically it's a script that runs. You can have it run every 5 minutes, run as a scheduled task. But what it does, it basically grabs a delivery group, it grabs a machine catalog. You can write to an event log. It has a high and low watermark, and it basically will look at your current load index. And then based on the high and low watermark that you define, it will go ahead and provision additional VMs, using MCS or PVS, right? It uses whatever the catalog method is. And then when your watermark gets lower and your session count gets lower, it'll actually deprovision those based on the tag. It's actually pretty neat. It was working a few times and it stopped working, so it wasn't consistent enough to say, let's go ahead and run through it. But we do want to show that it is pretty neat that is a possibility.
Point being, it's an old script, but Citrix is doing stuff around there. It'll eventually, hopefully, be in Studio where you don't have to worry about this right here, right? All the fancy PowerShell stuff. But just a note on that, on the Nutanix side, you got Calm and Runbook capability to be able to do something similar if you're familiar with that. So just know you can do it there as well. So.
Yep. Yeah, and then what we'll do now is we'll kind of pull out of here, I guess, and we'll kind of pop back to the deck to kind of wrap things up. Yeah. Let me go here.
And then just to kind of talk about some of the offerings that we have very quickly, and then I want to get to your questions.
Here we go.
So we have an advisory workshop. I'm not going to go through all this, but where we talk specifically about all the complexities and these kind of things from an enterprise standpoint, identity, public cloud, hybrid cloud, EUC, everything, so on and so forth. You can go to the next slide here. You can really see it's something, custom that we've created specifically for this workshop that has been really popular. So if you have any interest in that, working with myself and Shane, on cool, some cool workshop sessions and talking through all this stuff and designing out your future state environment, this is where it's at. So next slide.
Yep.
And then finally, we got the jump start here, right? So this is something we mentioned at the beginning. If you have any interest in this would kind of be the outline of what we showed and what we'd make available to you as our customer to be able to build for you, right? So kind of some of the bullets here.
Being pay as you go, you can get it plumbed in your environment pretty quickly and test it out, which is pretty awesome. So
so if you have any interest in that, let us know, Ellie. But then just build all these out for some opening questions. We've been answering a bunch as we go here in the chat. but yeah, we don't have a ton of time, unfortunately, but we had some questions built out just in case we did have time. The QR code at the top is really about the DR side of things for design for Nutanix clusters out there from a Citrix perspective. So if you scan that, it'll take you out to that code. But then you got, some of these things to think about is the pay-as-you-go cloud commit, bring your own license from a Nutanix standpoint that I talked about. Where does hibernate make sense? Where is it realistic? Obviously, it's 24/7 shop. It's not going to be a realistic scenario to hibernate. If you're burst, cyclical, seasonal workers, so on and so forth, it does. You can save a lot of money by hibernating, right? If it's a DR event, you can bring it up once in a while to replicate workloads. Have your workloads replicated depending on what you're using it for, and then just spin it up for a DR scenario or something. Is it really expensive or is it not? Right, bare metal, yes, is expensive, but you can throw as many EC2 instances on there as you want, right? So Shane, Jaron, pipe in anytime, but
Yeah, the main thing, expense thing too, is that if you're trying to price this for 24/7, 365, yes, it can be expensive. But also that's where you look at your different licensing or your different cloud commitments with the cloud provider, whether it's reserved instances, dedicated instances, that kind of stuff, and your terms on those things. But also to look at some of the tools we talked about, right? So most cases that we're coming across for EUC are bursting and disaster recovery. So we're using things like hibernation and resume, shrinking the cluster to a minimal footprint until you need to expand the cluster to do your workloads. So, a DR example here, it's like we can use our APIs, the clusters APIs, and on our blog, we have some things out there by team member Dwayne, who did some testing to where you can use things like runbooks in Prism Central to automatically wake the cluster and do things like expand the cluster out based on your cluster workload in a bursting scenario. Another example would be using APIs, and there are some things we're looking at enhancing too as well, is to do periodic scheduling of replication. Depending on your recovery point time and your recovery point objective, you could say, hey, I'm going to wake the cluster up for a little bit of time to do my replication over to it, and then hibernate the cluster as well. So there are things to help you to control and manage the cost. In this presentation, they showed one node, which is more for POC non-production use, but our minimum is 3 nodes. And then you could expand to up to 16 nodes in a cluster and then have multiple clusters from there based on your requirements. So that's where you look at the cost. Don't just look at 24/7, 365, because we're not always seeing those for the typical use case. Think about those different cost measures in there. And then 4, about the support entitlement public cloud fit in. So Citrix has that support statement for anything public cloud, which clusters is run on public cloud. So it falls under that statement to where you have to use virtual apps and desktop service for anything above 1912 LTSR for the customer managed control plane. It's also Citrix ready. We have some blogs out there on Nutanix about it. We also have a demo as well for bursting 2,000 desktops in under 2 hours. That goes through cluster creation. It goes through replicating the base image over for MCS, and then spinning up 2,000 desktops all under 2 hours with a 16 node cluster. But Citrix also will have some content come in for clusters as well for AWS, and then look for more stuff to be coming also for clusters in Azure. GPU support is something that we always get asked about. It is being evaluated. We are looking at different node types today in AWS for GPU. So if you're looking at a GPU use case, be sure to let us know or the choice team know, so we can prioritize that based on customer demand. Yep. And then other cloud types being evaluated. AWS was the first one because they have the APIs for on-demand bare metal provisioning. Azure was second as we worked with them on their node instances, and then as other demands and other capabilities and other clouds are requested, those will be evaluated as well. And then MCS, we fully support MCS and PVS. So that question came in the chat. Today you have PVS on Azure native, but clusters can do, because again, it's just AHV on bare metal nodes in the cloud. You can do PVS today, supported in AWS and Azure, and easily do it when we support other clouds down the road.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Jarian, for going through those
Yeah.
things. I'm
Yeah.
passionate about the GPU side. Can't wait to hear more of that. Get that prioritized quick. So,
And also, too, I just want to add too. So while today we have 4 node types for AWS, the initial node offering looks like 2 node types for Azure, but that always will expand later. And I'm not sure if you noticed today we do have AWS GovCloud support, which I expect to have that too in Azure as well. So whether you're on non-GovCloud or GovCloud requirements, we will be able to cover both those requirements.
will that probably be the same on the Azure side too, Jarian, you think? by any chance?
Yeah, eventually we'll have it. I just know today AWS is already there, and US West and US East.
Mhm.
And then I don't have the details for Azure yet, but I'm sure we'll have that as well for Azure.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so I reached out. I don't see any other additional questions in the chats. So Shane, unless you got something extra, I think thanks for
No, I
everybody
think-
who stayed 10 minutes after and that's my wife. the ER.
Hi.
Wow, man. How do I go?
I know, man.
My wife isn't at the office.
That doesn't happen every day.
Wow, man, that's a stunning move there, man. Wow. Did you pay her to do like how'd that
I
happen?
did
So
not.
on
I did
point.
not.
The ending comes, she comes in with the side cheek. Unbelievable, man.
No, that's a good way to wrap.